So, how was it?
Definitely one of the best movies Disney's come out with in the past 10 years.
Ooh, very bold statement there. You can just hear every Frozen fan ever screaming boo in the stands.
Frozen was just annoying for me. There were songs every couple of minutes. There were songs in this. Only a handful of songs. Not all of them were great. I mean, the Mother Gothel one.
Mother knows best.
Yeah, that one got a little annoying after a while. The one,
I kind of liked it just because, like, I feel like I could sing it.
And then the other song with all the lanterns, that was, it looked great at least.
I wonder how many guys just, like, tried to copy that for their engagement. Can you imagine?
Here's a paper lantern, let's set it off and be romantic. Remember how that worked out for us?
Yeah, well, it was like, 15, 20 minutes of us trying to knock a flaming lantern out of a tiny tree. That lantern thing, well, incredibly gorgeous. I'd hate to be the cleanup crew. That's going to go into the water. Like, are they on a lake, or is it like a connection to the ocean?
Because, they're next to a forest. Most of them are going to go up into the sky, but when you set off, 45,000 lanterns...
They're going to be, in the water.
There's going to be a few that are going to run into the trees. The one that had to lift back up, the animation's great. I thought it looked really good.
I have to be honest with you, though, it didn't feel like a princess movie. The king and queen never spoke. Did they even have a name? I think their names were just king and queen. And God knows what the name of their kingdom was. And then Rapunzel is very briefly shown as a princess.
In the original, she wasn't even the princess. It was a prince that found her in the tower. So her parents were just regular people who lived next to the witch Gothel, even though you never see her do any magic. But she gets pregnancy cravings and sends him over into her garden to steal some Rapunzel. He gets caught and scared for his life because he thinks that she's about to turn his body into fertilizer for this garden. She's like, alright, I won't kill you, but let me have your firstborn baby. No questions asked.
Okay, so in the original, she doesn't kidnap the baby, she's given the baby. No,
yeah, she's given the baby. She just shows up when the baby's born, just like, oh, thank you. By the way, I'm naming it Rapunzel as some 1800s middle finger to the family, I guess. I don't know. In the original, she's 12 years old when Gothel throws her into the tower, and presumably her hair is just long because of neglect. That's how Gothel gets into the tower, is the whole Rapunzel, let down your hair. She's up in this tower, and the prince just hears her one day singing, and is like, oh, she sounds hot. So he stalks the tower and sees Gothel, how she gets in, and so he waits for her to leave, and then impersonates Gothel. After she pulls up this man, she's like, oh my god, it's the first man I've ever seen, basically. And he's like, oh, you're hot, let's get married. And she's like, okay.
How long did she spend in the tower then? She wasn't 12 in this movie.
A couple of years, so maybe early
14?
Teenager. Not to make it any creepier.
Oh no.
He booty calls a few more times, and eventually she gets pregnant.
Oh no.
And she's like, oh, Gothel, I'm getting bigger for no explainable reason. And Gothel's like, oh crap, you're pregnant, you slut. I'm gonna cut all your hair off and throw you out into the wilderness. So the prince comes calling, climbs the hair, sees that it's Gothel and not Rapunzel, and then immediately jumps off the tower, eyes first, into some thorn bushes.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and then wanders the wilderness for years, just being depressed. He finds Rapunzel. She apparently gave birth to twins in the wilderness by herself.
Oh.
And has been living there raising them. Feral, I guess? So she cries into his eyes, and they magically become better, where they go and back to his kingdom and live happily ever after.
I would say, based on the original story, I would say this interpretation's pretty darn good. All things considered, the fact that most Grimm brothers, somebody dies rather painfully in it, and I would say Mother Gothel's death, she turned to dust and literally vanished before she hit the ground.
And there's other characters in Disney movies that have fallen to their death.
Lion King, you don't see Mufasa actually hit the ground. Gaston in Beauty and the Beast.
But you never actually see them hit the ground.
It's true.
And because she turned to dust before she hit the ground, it actually shows some kind of impact. My biggest issue with the movie is that it doesn't explain enough. The flower, how did she know what to sing? Apparently other people knew that there was magic out there to be found, because when the queen was dying, they were sent out to find it.
And they didn't know the magical song because they just friggin' melted that down in some water
Right?
and poured it down the queen's mouth.
And then she brushes her hair and sings to get the powers afterwards. But when Flynn gets his hand cut, she wraps her hair around his hand, and that's what heals him. And at the end, the magic still brings Flynn back to life.
Yeah.
So this is literally magic that can heal, bring back to life, and she's out there using it to make herself pretty.
Right. Well, also now Rapunzel is going to have to learn how to deal with the full lengths of a healing process because her body's never actually had to deal with that. You know, every time she got a cut, scrape, or boo-boo, she put that hair on there and just, healed it on up. She has never experienced a scab in her life. The girl is about to have a whole new world. Acne? I am sure acne's going to start showing up on that face now.
But the magic's still inside her. As long as she cries, she can do anything. That's feminism, right?
Oh my god! Feminism? You want to talk feminism? Boy, don't even get me started. This movie could have been badass, but they missed the mark just barely. Here is the thing. In the trailer, which is what got me originally into this movie, was seeing Flynn get grabbed by hair and the hair using his own body against him to punch him and toss him out of a window.
And there was also the scene where she drops the hair on him. There's a lot that they changed.
Yes.
From the original trailer.
They changed her badass hair kung fu to a frying pan, where she whaps him over the head with it and squeals like there's a mouse on the floor and runs and hides.
It's a very appropriate reaction.
It was an appropriate reaction. But when I see the badass fighting in the trailer, and then there's none of that, it's just her using it a couple of times to whip things like she's Indiana Jones. They could have made her similar to even Fiona in Shrek by making her a badass kung fu artist with her hair. That would have been awesome. But they made her into this girl who fights with a frying pan and tried to make that cool by having Flynn fight with it. And her name makes no sense in this remake. At least to the original story, it made sense because, like you said, giant middle finger, where, they named her after the plant that they stole. Maybe the sun drop fell on some Rapunzel and, made it magical if that's where the way you want to go with it. But
that would have been cool.
If you really want to keep to the original, it could have been growing in Gothel's yard and making herself young because it was in her yard. And then the parents still could have stolen it to save, the mother.
Or they got to keep the parents, these perfect, blameless king and queen. They vilify Gothel more in this remake. This magic that can do anything. Gothel is selfishly hoarding it out in the woods somewhere, even though she should have just taken it back. Then it's the mom's dying, so they have to go and send the people out to find it, and they found it in the woods. It's, fair game. Nobody has claim to it.
That's true.
So then Gothel goes and steals a baby.
They made the parents completely blameless. You're right. And they made it all about vanity. Once again, a female villain in a Disney movie. It's all about vanity. We just talked about the blameless king and queen, this apparently benevolent couple who were going to kill a guy over stealing a crown. They made that quite clear by that ominous showing of the gallows through the window. Oh yeah, real great benevolent king and queen. Really loved, really wonderful.
It was...
Of course, if you're a good thief, like Aladdin and Flynn, you get a princess.
He's a thief that literally gets everything that he asks for.
On an island that I own, tending, rested, and alone, surrounded by enormous piles of money.
Or he even gets the crown at the end of the movie. He's holding it.
Yeah.
He's now locked down a princess. He's going to be, a king.
They said they were going to get married.
The narration was dumb. It was just at the beginning and at the end. And who were they talking to?
Boys. They were talking to the little boys who they thought would not be interested in another princess movie, so they were trying to rope in the boys and make it seem like a swashbuckling good old tale with thieves and fights and all that. I mean, they even started with the classic, "This is the story of how I died," and show his wanted poster.
Yeah.
It's basically the start of Robin Hood. Princess and the Frog, did not do as well as people thought.
That was the movie that came out before Tangled.
Exactly.
No. Well, people who saw it really liked it, but it didn't do great when it came out.
They thought it was because it had princess in the title.
So they named their next princess movie Tangled to make it more ambiguous, and then they market their commercials as this male protagonist adventure movie.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like that's what
grabby.
Disney's game plan was.
Oh, heck yeah.
If you really think about it, there's no explanation to things. The magic has no explanation of how it works.
Nope, yada,
so whenever
yada,
they
magic.
needed to do anything, they can just have it do anything. She can say one line of it and get her hair to glow long enough for them to escape. When you don't explain anything, you can just make it do whatever you want.
It's the Harry Potter phenomenon. If you have magic in a movie, you can automatically yada yada your way out of any situation, no matter what. The heroes are always going to come out on top, no matter what, especially if you're a princess and a handsome protagonist.
I think everything else about the movie, though, was great. Like I said, the animation was great. It was very cinematic.
It was.
And
it was funny.
The voice acting was great, too. The
Yeah.
singing, like, Mandy Moore did great. As Rapunzel, Shazam did a pretty good job. Yeah, I think it was just the story that could have used a little more story. But you could say that about the original, too, so... And all in all, I guess a very decent adaptation.
I would say that you're right, it is better than Frozen.
That's because all the characters in Frozen sucked.
I did not identify with any characters in this movie, and I think that that's another thing. Like, a lot of kids didn't see themselves in these situations.
Maybe if there was more story to the characters, because Flynn is just a generic thief.
Like, yada yada backstory, poor little orphan Eugene, which, okay.
So I can't say too much about the Disney classics, because I've only seen them once when I was 10 years old at the most.
Or I've seen them 1,000 times each.
But it seems like one of the best adaptations in modern Disney.
I would say so.
And that includes their superhero movies.
I think you're right, but best adaptation, I would say so far, considering they don't have to touch on time period, culture.
Because there was no time period told, other than the times of castles.
Still a cute little fairy tale.
I guess, put it on for your kids, because kids aren't going to nitpick the storyline like we do. It's going to be a fun kids' adventure, which I guess that's what Disney does. I really think it should have been bigger than Frozen was. Why isn't there a Tangled 2?
I think
They got a Frozen 2.
so. Pascal at least beats Olaf.
Pascal kills a woman! He doesn't know that she was going to dissolve before she hit the ground.
Straight up committed murder. So I would say, yeah, coolest princess animal sidekick.
Underrated.
Underrated, yeah.
Pascal definitely beats Olaf.